Hi, I'm Ava, a 29-year-old marketing specialist in a bustling tech company. My life took a significant turn 2 years ago when I married Jake, my colleague from the finance department. Our story wasn't just a romance, it was a journey that started in the least expected way, at our workplace, and blossomed into what seemed like a perfect life together. I remember the day I met Jake vividly. It was a typical busy morning at the office, and I was rushing through the cafeteria with a cup of coffee, my mind racing with deadlines and meetings. In my haste, I bumped into Jake, spilling coffee all over his neatly pressed shirt.
Oh no.
"I'm so sorry," I exclaimed, my face flushing with embarrassment. Jake, surprisingly calm, just chuckled and said, "Hey, no problem. It's just coffee. Happens all the time." That casual, friendly response was the start of something special. We began chatting more often, finding excuses to meet at the coffee machine or in the lunch area. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, ranging from work projects to our shared love for hiking and indie music. Jake had a charm and wit that was irresistible. Over time, our casual meetings turned into deliberate lunch dates. We'd find ourselves lost in conversations, and soon, those lunches turned into dinners. There was an undeniable connection between us, and it wasn't long before we started dating officially. One evening, as we walked through the city park, Jake stopped and looked at me with those warm, sincere eyes. "Ava, I know it's only been a few months, but I feel like I've known you forever." "You're amazing," he said. I felt my heart skip a beat. "Jake, I feel the same way." "There's something special about us," I replied, my hand finding his. Introducing Jake to my parents was the next big step. Coming from a traditional background, they had certain expectations about marriage and family roles. My mom always emphasized the importance of being a homemaker, while my dad often talked about the stability a man should bring into a household. "Dad, Mom, I want you to meet Jake. He's not just my boyfriend, he's my partner in every sense," I told them one Sunday afternoon. Jake was his charming self, but I could sense the apprehension in my parents. "Ava, we just want to make sure you can balance your work and home. It's a lot to handle," my mom expressed her concern. Jake took my hand and addressed them confidently, "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, I respect your values, and I assure you, Ava and I are a team. We'll support each other in every aspect of our lives." Deciding to move in together was a big decision, but it felt right. Jake's house was a quaint, cozy place, nestled in a quiet neighborhood. We spent days turning it into our home, picking out furniture, painting walls, and sharing laughter and dreams. "Look at us, building our future together, brick by brick," Jake said one evening as we hung a painting in the living room. I remember feeling a sense of contentment, standing there with him in our home, a place that symbolized our love and partnership. "Our little paradise," I replied, a smile spreading across my face. Life in our little paradise took an exciting turn when I discovered I was pregnant. I remember holding the positive test, my heart pounding with a mix of joy and disbelief. Sharing the news with Jake was a moment I had dreamt about. "Jake, I have something amazing to tell you," I said one evening, the test hidden behind my back. He looked up, curious. "What's up, Ava?" I held out the test to him, watching his eyes widen with realization. "We're going to be parents." Jake's reaction was priceless. He swept me into his arms, spinning me around. "This is the best news ever. I can't believe we're going to have a baby." However, the initial euphoria soon gave way to the harsh realities of a challenging pregnancy. Nausea and extreme fatigue became my constant companions. My senses heightened to the point where even the smell of coffee, which I once loved, made my stomach churn. As my condition worsened, I found myself unable to cope with everyday tasks. I would sit at the kitchen table, head resting in my hands, feeling utterly drained. Jake would find me like that after coming back from work. "Ava, are you okay? You look exhausted," he'd say, his face lined with concern. I tried to put on a brave face. "I'll be fine. It's just the pregnancy taking its toll." Realizing I couldn't continue like this, I made the difficult decision to go on maternity leave, albeit without pay. I broke the news to Jake, hoping for his understanding. "Jake, I can't keep up with work anymore. I'm going on maternity leave," I told him hesitantly. He frowned, clearly not pleased. "Unpaid leave? Ava, that's going to be tough on us financially." I felt a sting of guilt, knowing he was right, but I had no choice. "I know, but I can barely get through the day." As days passed, our once tidy home started reflecting my inability to keep up. Piles of laundry, unwashed dishes, and takeout boxes became a common sight. Jake's frustration began to show. One day, he came home to find me lying on the couch, too nauseated to move. The house was in disarray. "Ava, what's going on? Why isn't any of this done?" he snapped, gesturing to the messy room. I felt a lump form in my throat. "I'm sorry, Jake. I can't." He let out a sigh of exasperation and walked away. That night, we ate in silence, the air thick with unspoken tension and disappointment. As my pregnancy progressed, so did the difficulties at home. The once joyful anticipation of our baby was overshadowed by the increasing strain between Jake and me. Our home, once a haven of love and comfort, began to feel like a battleground. With my health not improving, I found even the simplest tasks overwhelming. Our home started to reflect this neglect. Dirty dishes piled up, laundry lay forgotten, and the dust settled on every surface. I could barely muster the energy to get off the couch, let alone clean. One particularly tough day, Jake came home to a sink full of dishes and takeout containers littering the table. His patience, it seemed, had reached its limit. "Seriously, Ava? It's like a pigsty in here," he exclaimed, his voice tinged with frustration and anger. I looked up from the couch, feeling a mix of guilt and helplessness. "Jake, I can't keep up. You know how hard this has been for me." Jake's demeanor had shifted from his usual caring self to someone I hardly recognized. He started spending more time away from home, often coming back late. His annoyance was palpable every time he stepped into our increasingly chaotic house. "Ava, when I come home, I want to relax, not clean up this mess," he argued one evening, his tone harsh and accusing. I tried to explain, my voice weak and shaky. "I understand, but I'm doing the best I can. This pregnancy is it's so hard." Things reached a breaking point one evening when I mustered all my strength to tidy up. I was halfway through doing the dishes when Jake walked in. "What, now you decide to clean? A little late for that, don't you think?" he said mockingly, watching me struggle. Tears welled up in my eyes. "I'm trying, Jake. I'm trying so hard," I whispered, feeling utterly defeated. Jake let out a sigh of frustration and walked away, leaving me there, alone and heartbroken. The growing strain at home with Jake left me feeling isolated and desperate for support. I hoped turning to my parents, who had always been my rock, would provide some comfort. But the conversation that unfolded only added to my turmoil. I called my parents one evening, my heart heavy with the burden of my struggles. "Mom, Dad, I'm really having a hard time," I began, my voice laced with hope and desperation. "The pregnancy is taking a toll on me, and Jake, he doesn't understand." There was a pause on the line, a silence that felt uncomfortably long. Then my mother's voice came through, stern and unsympathetic. "Ava, pregnancy is hard for every woman. You need to push through and take care of your home. That's your responsibility." I felt a surge of frustration. "Mom, it's not just about pushing through. I'm sick all the time, and Jake is barely around to help." Her response was immediate and dismissive. "When I was pregnant with you, I managed everything without complaining. You're not the first woman to go through this, Ava." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "But Mom, every pregnancy is different. I'm really struggling here," I tried to explain, my voice cracking. There was no empathy in her reply. "You need to be a better wife, Ava. It's not Jake's job to clean and cook. You're making excuses. My father, who had been silent, finally spoke up, his voice echoing my mother's traditional views. Your mother is right, Ava. You have duties as a wife. It's important to uphold your responsibilities in your marriage. I felt a wave of helplessness wash over me. Dad, I just need a bit of understanding and support. It's really tough right now. His tone was firm, unwavering. This is part of marriage, Ava. You need to find a way to manage. The call ended with me feeling more alone than I had ever felt. The people I had looked up to my whole life, who I thought would understand, were instead imposing the same traditional pressures that were suffocating me. My struggle was dismissed as a lack of effort, my feelings invalidated. As I hung up the phone, tears streamed down my face. The support I so desperately needed was denied, leaving me feeling abandoned and misunderstood. The emotional turmoil of this conversation added another heavy layer to the already overwhelming stress of my difficult pregnancy and troubled marriage. Alone in my room, I couldn't help but feel trapped. How was I to navigate this challenging phase of my life when those closest to me turned a blind eye to my suffering? Amid the chaos of my difficult pregnancy and the mounting tension at home, a new worry began to gnaw at me. Jake's behavior had changed drastically, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that something more was going on. Jake started coming home late more often than not, his excuses vague and his demeanor distant. One evening, as he walked through the door well past midnight, I couldn't hold back my concern. Jake, it's past midnight. Where have you been? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the worry in my heart. He shrugged off his coat with an air of indifference. Work stuff, Ava. You wouldn't understand. His dismissive tone stung, and I pressed on, you never used to be this late. It's happening too often. Jake avoided my gaze, his reply short and sharp. Things change, Ava. Work is demanding right now. A week later, another piece was added to the puzzle of my suspicions. Jake came home one evening, and as I leaned in to greet him, a faint but distinct scent of perfume hit me, a scent that was unfamiliar and certainly not mine. Jake, what's that smell? I asked, sniffing subtly. He stiffened, a flash of something crossing his face before he masked it. What smell? It's probably just from the office. You know how it is. But I knew it wasn't just from the office. My heightened senses were picking up something else, something that didn't belong. As days passed, Jake's coldness grew. He barely spoke to me, and when he did, his words were often sharp and critical. One night, as we sat in silence at dinner, I attempted to bridge the growing gap between us. Jake, is everything okay? You seem so distant lately, I ventured, hoping for some honest communication. Jake's response was curt, his tone cold. I'm fine, Ava. Just tired, that's all. His words felt like a barrier, shutting me out. The man who had once been my partner and confidant was now a stranger sitting across from me. Left alone with my thoughts, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. Was Jake seeing someone else? The late nights, the unfamiliar perfume, and his increasing indifference were pieces of a puzzle that formed a picture I was afraid to confront. The day that shattered the remnants of my fairy tale life arrived without warning. It was a quiet afternoon, and I was resting on the couch, battling the constant fatigue that had become my constant companion. The sound of the front door opening jolted me back to reality. I struggled to sit up as Jake walked in, not alone, but with a young woman beside him. She was laughing at something he said, her laughter echoing mockingly in our once peaceful home. Jake, what's going on? Who is this? I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of confusion and fear. Jake looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. This is Lisa, he said bluntly. She works with me. Lisa glanced at me, her eyes roaming over my pregnant figure with a sneer. So, this is her, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. The atmosphere was charged with tension, and I felt a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. Jake, why is she here? I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. Jake's response was like a slap in the face. "Ava, I'm done with this," he said, gesturing at me with a look of disgust. "I can't deal with you anymore. I've been promoted at work, and I've moved on." I felt my world crumbling around me. "Moved on? What are you saying, Jake?" He didn't even flinch. "I'm saying it's over between us. Lisa and I are together now. I want you out of this house." Lisa's laughter rang out again, mocking my pain. "Look at her, Jake. She actually thought you'd stay with her." I struggled to process the cruelty and betrayal. "But I'm pregnant, Jake. I'm carrying your child," I whispered, my voice breaking. His reply was cold and merciless. "I don't care. It's not my problem. Pack your things and leave." They left the house together, leaving me alone, shattered, and in disbelief. I sat there, numb, unable to comprehend the brutal reality of my situation. The man I had loved and trusted, the father of my unborn child, had just abandoned me for someone else, in the most callous way possible. Reeling from Jake's betrayal, I found myself in a state of utter despair. Pregnant, alone, and with nowhere to turn, I dialed my parents' number, my hands shaking and my heart heavy with a mix of fear and hope. "Mom, Dad, Jake, he's left me. He was having an affair," I managed to say through tears. There was a stunned silence on the other end before my mother's voice, cold and disapproving, filled the line. "Ava, you must have done something to drive him away. A man doesn't just leave without a reason." Her words were like daggers to my heart. "Mom, how can you say that? He brought another woman into our home and told me to leave." My father's voice then came, stern and unwavering. "Ava, you know our stance on divorce. It's a disgrace. You need to fix your marriage, not run away from it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Fix it? Dad, he's already left me. He doesn't want me or the baby." My mother's response was final. "We can't help you, Ava. You need to sort this out with Jake. We won't accept you back like this." The call ended with a click, leaving me in a state of shock. My own parents, who I thought would be my sanctuary in my darkest hour, had turned their backs on me. At this moment, I thought of the one person who had always shown me a different perspective on life, my Aunt Clara. My parents had severed ties with her because she chose to dedicate her life to her career, a decision they never approved of. But despite their disapproval, I had always maintained a secret bond with her. With my heart pounding and hands trembling, I dialed her number. It was a call for help, a beacon of hope in my hour of need. "Aunt Clara, it's Ava," I said, my voice quivering. "I'm in trouble." Her response was immediate, her voice filled with concern. "Ava, tell me what happened. You know you can always count on me." I poured out my heart to her, telling her about Jake's betrayal, my parents' harsh rejection, and the hopeless situation I found myself in. With each word, I felt the weight on my chest lighten, if only a little. Aunt Clara listened in silence, her presence over the phone a comforting embrace. When I finished, she spoke with a firmness that was both reassuring and commanding. "Ava, listen to me. You are not alone. Do not go anywhere. Stay put. I will handle this," she said with conviction. Her words were like a lifeline, pulling me out of the depths of my despair. "But Aunt Clara, what can you do? Everything's a mess. Ava, you know me. I have my ways. I've faced tougher situations in my career, and I won't let anyone harm my niece. Trust me, I will set things right," she assured me with a confidence that was both bold and comforting. As I hung up the phone, a sense of calm enveloped me. The storm wasn't over, but now I wasn't facing it alone. Sitting in the living room, I hadn't packed a single thing. I was waiting, calm but anxious, for Jake to return. When the door swung open and he stormed in with Lisa, his expression changed from smug satisfaction to fury as he saw the untouched boxes. "Why haven't you packed? You're supposed to be out of here," Jake shouted, his face red with anger. I couldn't help but smile, a sense of serene confidence enveloping me. I'm not going anywhere, Jake, I said calmly. I have a reliable defender. His rage turned to confusion, and before he could retort, the kitchen door opened. Out stepped Aunt Clara, composed and authoritative, accompanied by a sharply dressed man I recognized as a lawyer. Jake's face turned white as a sheet, his earlier bravado disappearing. Jake, Lisa, may I present to you my Aunt Clara? I said, pleased with her dramatic entrance. She held up her hand, a signal that she was in control now. I think I've heard enough, Jake. And you, Lisa, this is not your concern anymore. Jake, now looking like a deer caught in headlights, managed to stutter out. You are the CEO. That's right, Aunt Clara replied coolly. And you, Jake, have just lost not just your promotion but also your job. His shock was palpable, but Aunt Clara wasn't done yet. And the gentleman here, she gestured to the lawyer, has recorded every insult you hurled at Ava. I couldn't help but feel a wave of relief and vindication. I never advertised that my aunt was the CEO of the company, Jake. But she is, and she's on my side. Aunt Clara's voice was stern. Your worthlessness has been duly noted, Jake. You're not only losing your job but prepared to be shaken down for every last cent for your child and for the emotional distress you caused Ava. As Jake and Lisa hastily retreated, their defeat evident, I realized this was more than just a victory. It was justice, a powerful, resounding justice. Aunt Clara, the woman who had silently been my pillar of strength, had not just promised support, she had delivered it in the most formidable way. Well, what about Jake? I will leave him in the past, along with his ruined career and ruined reputation. Do I feel sorry for him? No, not a bit. It is how karma works.